Good morning, everybody. This is Josh. How are you? Good day, good evening. I am re-recording this video here at Wegmans, the Disneyland of food, after a just abysmal performance over at the lake. I have to have some standards of quality of communication in these videos, so I'm doing this again. I have streamed. And I'm going to talk to you about it on this lovely morning. I'm wearing a hoodie. It is mid-August here in New York. We had hurricane rain, we had 3,000% humidity, but we're having a little mild spell right now. It's chilly this morning. I had to wear my nasty, ratty old hoodie. And so, how about that? So I streamed some stuff. Basically, what I'm going to call this is the Sydney Sweeney Starter Pack. I wanted to see what all the buzz was about, so I have streamed 2 movies that I missed in theaters. That both feature this ingenue, this starlet, Sydney Sweeney, who happens to be, by the way, on the bottle of my breakfast beverage this morning. I think that's a coincidence. I don't remember. So I watched Anyone But You, the rom-com featuring Sydney Sweeney and what's his name, Glenn Powell, who I've talked about a lot about lately. And this is not where I'm going to have anything new to say about him. But I also streamed Immaculate. We're going to talk about both of these. Probably have a little more to say about one of them than the other. But let's get Anyone But You out of the way. Anyone But You is an R-rated rom-com starring the 2 hot people of the moment. And essentially they are 2 characters who have a one-night stand, and through some misunderstanding they part ways, and they are not big fans of each other. But then, wouldn't you know it, they end up thrust together at the wedding of a mutual. And not only are they forced to be together and spend time together at this wedding in Australia, in this remote, beautiful locale, but they each have, through machinations of the plot, exes who show up at the same wedding event. And so in order to manage that anxiety and make people jealous, they pretend to be together. And will they fall in love for real? There's no way to know. This movie is fine. I had heard various things, that it was dumb, that it was bad, that it was typical, that it was fine, that it was great. Some people really like this movie. I think some people are refreshed to see a movie like this, because an R-rated rom-com with this kind of production value and stars is, I guess rare. I don't know. People every year, everyone's like, well, this is the death of movies, and there's no more of this type of movie, and you can't make these movies anymore. And it's not so. They will, things are popular, things make money, some things get left behind, they come back, and they get revitalized. And so I don't, that kind of discourse I find is not very helpful. There's all different kinds of movies, and it can be refreshing to see a kind of movie that you personally feel like you haven't seen lately. So this is not my favorite type of movie, and as far as they go, it was fine. These are, attractive, charming people. As far as Sydney Sweeney as a performer, I don't know. I'm learning that she is a kind of power producer, and that she shepherds her projects, and that she gets things made, and I have to admire that. But maybe I'll talk a little bit more about her as a performer as relates to the next title. So, the locale is nice. There's all sorts of contrivance in Anyone But You. There's this running bit about people trying to manage them and put bugs in their ears by talking really loudly so they'll overhear something. And it's dumb, and the movie itself calls it out as stupid, but it just does it so much. And I don't know. It's silly, it's inoffensive, I guess. Wegmans truck. Look at that thing of beauty. All right, that's Anyone But You. It's fine. If you're predisposed for this kind of movie, that you could do worse, I suppose. Immaculate, on the other hand, is much more interesting to me. Now, I did famously say recently that there are 2 tropes in horror movies, 2 elements in horror movies that I'd be happy to never see again. One, of course, is creepy dolls, and the other one is nuns. And here we have a nun movie, and not only a nun movie, but one of a pair of nun movies. And I guess Longlegs is a secret nun movie, spoiler alert, but I'm thinking of The First Omen and Immaculate. And despite what I said, I quite enjoyed both of these movies, and I found them very interesting. Also interesting to note that these movies came out within weeks of each other, and they essentially have the same story. The First Omen is, of course, a kind of Lego sequel, prequel, reboot thing for the Omen franchise. and Immaculate is a new property. It's a neon, it's an indie horror movie, and they essentially have the same story about a young nun with a troubled past, a young girl with a troubled past who comes to Italy, not just becomes a nun, but goes to Italy to be part of, like, you know, real deal Vatican Catholicism and takes vows and gets into this world, and then discovers a sinister underbelly. And I'll avoid major spoilers, but I want to talk about some of the thematic elements in these movies just a little bit. So I was kind of surprised by this movie. I didn't realize it was a neon. It's not an A24, but it's a neon, which is in that same kind of league of, like, you know, and it's R-rated. For some reason, I had in my mind that Immaculate was a PG-13 kind of thriller, but it's a full-on horror. And in both of these movies, The First Omen and Immaculate, well, I say the stories are the same. Essentially, it's the same setup, and then to get inch closer to spoiler territory, the sinister stuff that happens, the underbelly, once they take their vows and find themselves in this world, it's essentially the same thing. It's people within the church trying to engineer something related to fertility in order to further their notion of, you know, God's plan or the end times or something crazy like that. And it's really surprising how similar these stories are until the final moments of each movie, because each movie resolves in a completely different way. I'll just say that. In the final moments of each, they couldn't be more different, the choices that are made. But I don't know. As far as Sydney Sweeney goes, you know, I feel like in the quieter moments and in the rom-com, she's just kind of fine. Like, she's this, you know, appealing, magnetic, charming young person, and but she's very serious, like, about her career. So as far as a performer, I'm not here to critique, like, acting, but I think that Anyone But You, she's just kind of playing like a normal person, and it's kind of like just fine. In Immaculate, she's pushed a little further into some histrionic places, into some intense places, and I think that's a real test of a performer, and I think she actually comes across better in Immaculate. I think that she, you know, and especially knowing that she's, like, personally using her clout to get this made, and it matters to her. Her passion is evident, and, you know, she's fine. I guess I still need to see more, but I am happy to see what she continues to achieve and accomplish and what gets made. And so I like when a young hot star, well, she's having it both ways, right? She's doing the rom-com where she's the hottie, but she's also doing the horror movie where some very intense and unpleasant things happen, and it's not a movie about how hot she is. It's a movie about other things. So good on her for that, and I hope that she'll be like a Chalamet or a DiCaprio, or someone who starts out hot and then, like, really uses that buzz and that clout and that trajectory and momentum to make to work with interesting filmmakers, to get interesting films made. I always admire that in a career. So I guess the only other thing to comment on would just be this trope of horror movies with religious elements. Usually it's Catholicism. I have a whole kind of thing about that I won't get into now, about, you know, we see horror movies and thrillers about religion. It's almost always Catholicism. When you see movies about Protestantism or evangelicalism, those are the movies made by the religious people, so they're not going to be very interesting. I'm sorry, but they're going to be a little bit more like, you know, they're going to be preaching to a choir. I think movies, and if someone was making a movie about religion, yeah, there are exceptions to that. I'll be interested to see this new A24, the one with Hugh Grant, Heretic. Very interested to see what the angle is on that one, because it looks a little bit wild and a little bit stupid, but I'll be interested to see. But as far as these two movies go, the idea of people within the church trying to engineer, I'm going to get a little bit more spoilery here, but trying to engineer the birth of a child in order to further God's plan. I find this fascinating that this is such a recurring trope in movies like this. That and really, if you dig down into what's really going on, this is another big difference between The First Omen and Immaculate, is that in one, they're trying to create the Antichrist in order to kickstart the end times. And this is an interesting thing culturally, because we see this in, like, well, I mean, frankly, not to get political on you, but in real life, in the news cycle, and especially in politics, we keep getting exposure to these political movers and shakers from the This is, I guess there's Catholic ones in real life, but it's usually the evangelicals who are doing this, who see power and politics as a way to kickstart and force the end times or God's plan or something forward. But in the movies, it's always like some secret society of, Druids or Catholics or something. And in The First Omen, it's not a spoiler about the Omen franchise that it's about the Antichrist. And so the machinations of how the main character is impregnated with a would-be Antichrist is very interesting and special and unique. And it's very different. Over in Immaculate, I'll spoil less about Immaculate because I guess they're both from the same moment, so I don't know why. But it's a little more scientific, a little more cooked up in a lab kind of a thing, and the motives are less clear. It's not the Antichrist. It's that they keep referring to it as the Savior, which I guess is the idea of the Antichrist, but is going to be a false savior or something. But I don't know. All those details are a little murky. I just find the theme interesting of, that there's so much drama and horror and stuff mined from this idea of people trying to force something to happen that will, kick off the end times or kick off God's, this idea that on the one hand, God's not showing up and not doing anything, and that kind of religious angst of, like, God said that he would do it, we have all these promises, we have all these things that are going to happen, why aren't they happening? And then on the other hand, what happens when they take those matters in their own hands and try to force it, and how poorly it goes. I find that interesting. It's usually not explored very thoroughly. It's just kind of like the basis for some credible tension and horror to happen. But I don't know. So in that sense, I was surprised by Immaculate, that it went to some places I didn't anticipate. Surprised by how similar it was to The First Omen, and also appreciative of the ways that it's different. I think The First Omen still might be a better film, although the ending, Immaculate, sticks the landing better. There's a whole lot of, like, franchise stuff crammed into the end of The First Omen. Prequel stuff, prequel problem. Prequels always have terrible endings because they have to. Furiosa was like that, great filmmaking, good fun movie, and then just it has to end where it ends, and it just, I don't know, it is what it is. But anyway, so that's my thoughts on these movies. Sydney Sweeney, I stan a queen. Do we still say that? Do we still say things like that? I don't know. Thank you for watching. I will be back with more reviews and other stuff, and an August riff. And I miss drawing. I'm going to try and do some sketching soon. We'll see. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I would like to. That's in my heart. I appreciate you watching. You can support me at Patreon, and you can also see my theatrical reviews immediately when I see the movies, if you're interested in following that kind of stuff. So otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Josh out.